Members of Council, I will call this meeting to order. If I can ask members of Council to please rise. For a moment of silence, and during this time, please remember the victims of the tragic event on Yonge Street and Walter Patrick Shanley. Thank you. Members, we have not completed our special meeting to appoint a councillor for Ward 33. We will return to that meeting. This regular meeting is now recessed. Now, this meeting is now resumed. Before the break, so we'll continue on to the speakers at this point. We have Councillor Cressy to speak.
Well, thank you, Speaker. And I'll speak very briefly, and I'm actually going to speak not around who I will be voting for, but rather just the process. I'll begin certainly by thanking all the candidates who came here today, all 18 of them. It's never easy to put your name forward and to stand in front of this chamber. And I want to thank them and encourage many of them to put your names forward in elections to come, be it this fall or later. I'll just say that on the process side, that I find the appointment process in my 4 years I've been here at City Hall very hard. In fact, I have found every time we have it, the appointment process to be divisive. And unfortunately, I find often the aftertaste has a level of toxicity within this chamber that I don't find is helpful for our functioning together. And having been through this now 3 times and seen it play out, going forward, should we have more vacancies in the next term, if I'm lucky enough to come back, I will always be voting for by-elections. I have come to believe through my 3.5 to 4 years here that it should be the electorate, not us, making these decisions. I think it's healthier for the incumbent or the new incumbent when they come in to have that vote of confidence. And I also think it's better for our own working relationship in this chamber to not have the backroom dealings which comes with an appointment. And I don't say that casting aspersions on anybody. I say for all of us it's healthier. If the timing is too tight to have a by-election, as sometimes it may be, as it is now, then I firmly am of the view that the seat should be left vacant with the staff in place to be managed by the clerk's office. I think that, too, is a healthier way for us to manage going forward. And so I will be casting a ballot, and I'm going to cast it. I'm going to cast it privately. I'm not even going to use my speech to speak to it. Rather, I'm simply going to say that in the new term, if I'm lucky enough to be back here, I will not support an appointment ever again. I will only support by-elections, and I would encourage us, if we are stuck with the Municipal Act as it's laid out, where there is this 60-day window where we must appoint, then we change that so that we can leave it vacant. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much, and thank you again to all the candidates for putting your names forward and speaking here today.
Thank you, Councillor Cressy. Councillor Mihevik.
Yes, thank you very much. I am a little discomforted by the process here as well, I must say. And you know, I started to write down the similar kind of post or towards the end of the term switches that we made for one reason or another. And I've noted about 7 of them. I might have missed 1 or 2. When Adam Vaughan ran for federal office, he was replaced by Sita Ramkalawan Singh. When Olivia Chow ran, she was replaced by Martin Silva. When Doug Holliday ran, he was replaced by Peter Leon. Jack Layton by Laura Jones. Jerry Altabello by Harvey Barron. Ron Moser by Jim Hart. And Baz Balkasoon by our own Paul Ainsley. And of course, Pam McConnell by Lucy Troisy. Before this term, though, like I think if you kind of mark like what's the tradition here? Like what kind of pattern are we setting? And I think the tradition is basically kind of like for like. So you will note that most of the folks who kind of bleed red were replaced by a person who bled red and orange and blue, and that basically was is the dominant pattern. So who decides whether, at the end of the day, of course, it's council, but I think the predominant influence of the local councillor whose seat is being left, or as interpreted by the local councillor, as to who would best fulfill the tradition of the person who got elected into office, I think they had the strongest voice in determining who that person would be. And I think we have a letter here on file for a particular candidate. I think, you know, we have a 5-minute window on candidates here. I think in the past I have trusted others to do that from all sides of council. Maybe I've missed one or two here where I went in a slightly different direction, but the will of council overruled and good decisions were made. I'm finding the kinds of rumors and rumors of rumors that we are having here, it's just a bit much. It's just a bit much. And I think it's time for us to say, you know what, the local councillor got elected. In this case, she has a sense of what the public will is in her area. And in her assessment of all the various players that are here, she's putting forward a recommendation. You know what? It's not the be-all and the end-all. You can, of course, go in a different direction. Of course we can. We have that liberty to do so. But I think it should have the strongest weight. And without me having done a lot of research on this, I'm going to be casting my vote for that person. Not that I have anything against any of the other candidates, and many of them spoke exceedingly well. And maybe if in a perfect process, I would have gone in a different direction. But I want to follow, frankly, the tradition of this council, what I perceive to be the tradition of this council, because I think in the time-limited fashion in which we work, they are in a very strong, not absolute, again, not absolute, but in a very strong position to say what that democratic will that they embody in getting elected, how that will should be manifest in the days ahead. Those are my comments, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Councillor Mammoliti.
So we just heard by Councillor Mihevc is the reason and the logic as to why I'm not going to do what he's preaching. And I think that, quite frankly, this has the tone of the underlying comments that are made outside of this chamber as we lead up to this, and how orchestrated this has actually been in the way of a process. Now I smell it. I'm not sure if any of you do, and maybe those of you that have orchestrated it aren't going to like what I'm about to say. But at the end of the day, how dare we do this to the people that thought that the process would be fair? That in fact this place is actually looking at qualifications as opposed to a letter by the former councillor seeking our approval to put somebody forward. That particular person, by the way, ran against her in the last election. And now that same person is saying, well, I'm not going to run the election. I'm only going to run part-time, and it's only going to be for a few months. And I think she said whoever wins, wins, basically. Now, at the end of the day, I'm not a fortune teller, but if I was in front of a fortune teller right now, here are the questions I would ask that fortune teller. Why the pledge? Why are there so many people up here saying that they only want to support somebody that's only going to be around for a few months? Why push for one candidate by one former councillor? If that former councillor loses the provincial election, will she be looking at her seat to come back to in this chamber? Have there been discussions about her coming back, and why all of a sudden the change in who would like to run and who wouldn't, part-time or full-time? Was there severance given to the former councillor? And if so, how much was it? And is she willing, if she comes back, to give it back to the city?
Councillor Mamalidi, that's not before us, please.
No, if I were in front of a fortune teller, that's what I would ask. Because at the end of the day, I'd like to know whether or not that councillor intends to come back. And Madam Speaker, you say this, but at the end of the day, it's everybody's responsibility to look at what's going on in this place. And what's going on here really does smell. I'm sorry. And when you've got this thing happening behind the scenes, let's create a pledge. Let's make sure that everybody supports somebody who only wants to be here for 3 or 4 months. And then as we find out, somebody might want to come back. Your severance, you take once. In this particular case, if I'm right, and something is going on in Ward 33, that has the potential for somebody to come back and lead up to another severance. Is that right, Madam Speaker?
Councillor Mamalidi, we will be... Okay, yes, Councillor Davis, thank you.
Cut me off again.
Councillor Mamalidi, we will be discussing that later in the...
No, at the end of the day, we're allowed to ask one question of each of the deputants. And I have got a list. I'll tell you exactly who they are. Our first speaker, our sixth speaker, our ninth speaker, and our 13th speaker. Those are the 4 that I'm contemplating and supporting. And that was based on one question that I'd asked. What really matters to Ward 33? Because that's really what matters here, is what the local community wants. Not whether or not you like them, you don't like them. A councillor gives a letter. Am I allowed to read some of this letter, Madam Speaker? Is that out of order as well?
You have the letter.
You want me to get into the friendships that have occurred over the last little while? And why she wants to support this particular candidate? I can do that. Or you can rule me out of order. I don't care. But at the end of the day, we're here to support the local community. And very few of you asked that question today. All you asked was, are you willing to sign a pledge? Because that's all you really care about. We shouldn't have the jurisdiction for appointments here. The province needs to change the law, so we can't do this. And whoever's saying that the clerk should have it, forget it. Give the bureaucracy more things to do. No, what should happen is the province should change the act so that it goes from a 90-day period to perhaps a 6-month period, or 7-month period, or 8-month period. And we should not have the ability to appoint, because what happens here is it's all political. I know how I'm going to vote, and it's political. Sure, I don't want another socialist on this council. We're about to entertain another 3 of them.
Thank you, Councillor Mamalidi. Your time's up. Thank you. Councillor Shan.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. That was an example of why this process is a failure.
Yes,
Because you hear talk about being neutral for the first 4 minutes, and the last minute is political ideology. And we are politicians. We will be using our political ideology to decide who we want, and that's why this process is flawed, and I have never supported an appointment process in the past. It's very important for us. We have 44 people deciding, and most likely those 44 people do not live in the ward. I love the idea that was put forward by Brian, and which we have been talking about earlier too. We have to start to find a way to manage this better. If it's 9 months, we should be able to go into leaving it vacant. In fact, when I got elected by elections, Councillor Cho had already taken a leave of absence for the campaign, and it was almost like 7 months before I was elected. There was nobody, and the staff held it. And staff members may be able to continue the transition better than appointing somebody for a very short period of time. So it's very important for us to take that suggestion into consideration and figure out a way to make sure that we go for by-election. If the time is too short, then it is left to the staff and the clerk's office to handle, because we cannot pretend to be here as neutral observers of the candidates evaluating their credentials. In fact, many people have already indicated who they are supporting. Many people already have figured out who they would be supporting for. And in fact, this whole process is optics and it's not genuine. In fact, we will hear some of the speakers say, amazing speeches, why don't you register to run, and so on. I think those comments are more patronizing and more condescending than in actual encouragement, because if we were really true to ourselves, this process is, it would have been much more clear to people. The pledge idea, I mean, again, we don't want to, in fact, by this process, advantage somebody over the democratic process. And that's why many councillors ask for a commitment. And the commitment has not been kept by people who said that they would keep those commitments. If that doubt is increasing, then we are moving into asking for a pledge, any pledge, and the pledge, and so on. I think this is not a comfortable direction for us. We should find an alternative way to make sure that we pick. I mean, Sita Ramkalawan Singh was an example of a caretaking kind of councillor who was there for a short period of time, who was committed to taking that on for a short period and didn't run. So I'm torn because I was contemplating whether to be here and participate in this process. But again, as an elected representative of this council, I thought, it is important to be part of this process because that's what we have decided to. So I would use diversity as a criteria. We are much less diverse than our city. We have one racialized woman in our council. We have very few racialized people in this council. Two of them are actually seeking provincial election from the ones we have. So this is an important consideration to have, not just to take anybody who is not skilled, not talented, but from the pool we know that there are people who are well-talented, very skilled, experienced, who can fit the diversity criteria we could look for in terms of gender, in terms of racial diversity, and so on. So I'm likely to make that decision based on both the skills and the experience and the kind of value they bring to the table, but also if they are from a racialized or equity-seeking group, that they be given a little bit more preference over the others as a way for us to commit to something we commit as a city on employment equity. So, Madam Speaker, I think when we come back, or there's one more councillor's vacancy that needs to be filled, that's going to be discussed again. Either we do this early enough or come back in next term and figure out a way to change what we have in front of us so that we can be engaging in this in a more meaningful way. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kelly?
All right, thank you, Speaker. Speaker, I'm not as concerned or as upset about this process as apparently some others are. When you look at the results, frankly, it works. Look at the caliber of people that we have appointed over time. And are there people on council who will be speaking before council on behalf of others? I'm sure. It puzzles me sometimes, Speaker, that we forget we're politicians. We live in a political world. We're not technocrats. And so there's a lot of give and take in the world in which we live that you may not find in other places. But come on. This is how politics in a democratic society functions. And I'm surprised at so many people not understanding that basic character of the job that we do, Speaker. With respect to the candidates who spoke today, I thank them all for having the courage to step forward. And I thought most of them spoke really, really well. From my perspective, I take into account the ideas or the arguments of the departing councillor. Why wouldn't I? They're close to the communities that they represent. I also listen very carefully to the candidates and to the questions asked by my colleagues. What I'm concerned about, or what my interest is, Speaker, is who among the candidates best knows and understands the issues of that ward. And I thought that there was one person today who demonstrated that very clearly, very specifically in her answers to the questions that were asked of her. So, Speaker, I hope that we continue with the appointment process just the way it is. It's very practical, and in the end, it has produced excellent results.
Thank you. Councillor Davis to speak.
Thank you. I find myself about to echo much of what my colleague, Senator Kelly had to say. I do want to first thank everyone who came today and putting yourself forward to be watched and heard and questioned by this council and others who are watching on TV is a big step, and I commend all of you. And there were many, I think, very skilled people who came before us today. But I too, like Councillor Kelly, looked for skills and experience, knowledge of the community, an alignment with the politics of the previous councillor who represented this community for 15 years. Very important, because that's a reflection of the political culture in that ward, I believe. And I also, as Councillor Shan mentioned, also wanted to look at diversity. That is important to me. And what I heard today from Divya Nayak is a candidate who best met all of those criteria for me. I did not know her. I did not speak with her. I did not even speak with Councillor Carroll about her. I have read all of the material here, and I heard her today. And what I saw was someone who really understood the issues in Ward 33. She has been actively engaged in all the major initiatives in the ward. There are many letters of endorsement. She has been active in community organizations as a volunteer. She's been active in her work life as a leader in a business and has experience working in the business sector. She's been involved in cleanup events, the participatory budget process. She clearly understands planning and what the key planning issues are in Ward 33. She has strong communication skills, and boy, she held her ground here in this chamber. And I think that's important as well. So she's self-assured, I think well-qualified, a racialized woman, very experienced, and knows the ward well. And that is exactly what we need, someone who will carry on the work of a woman with very similar skills and very similar priorities. And that's why I think we should all support Divya Nayak.
Thank you. Councillor Karygiannis.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's surprising me how when one speaks, the other side of my ear starts echoing. Thank you, Councillor Perks. The one thing that we've seen here today, we had a few individuals that stepped forward and put their name forward, and for that you're to be congratulated. However, I think there's about a couple of horses in the race, and we're getting down to brass tacks, 3 or 4. One individual was asked some hard questions, and the answers were not genuine. Another individual said that I've done a lot of work with the Armenian community. When asked who are the key players, did not know. Does experience count? It very much counts. Does it matter that we only have another 3 council meetings and we need somebody that can hit the ground running and it's experienced? There's not a lot of people that have, from the 18 that are, the names that are here that are experienced, not a lot of people that have any political experience, 1 or 2. And we heard from South Riverdale, everybody that was running, will you sign the pledge, will you sign the pledge? You can sign all the pledges you want. You can't be held responsible because you signed a pledge. We had people in this room that ran, and right after they finished, they came here, they were appointed, and next they went and they ran, right after. So saying to somebody, well, would you run again? And we don't want to hold them, we want to hold them responsible. I'll tell you one thing. I asked Lucy, will you run again? And she said no. But I'll tell you one thing. There's a person in this chamber that does yeoman's work and represents her constituents more than anything else, is Lucy Tracy. Now, where she runs again or she doesn't run again, that will be her choice. But for us to say to people once they're here and they're proven, you shouldn't be running again, I think that's a fool's world. The important thing that we must do is say, okay, how many months do we have before the next general election? Federally and provincially, it's within 6 months of somebody resigning that there is a by-election. If we want to be honest with ourselves, then allow a by-election to happen. Well, we're within 6 months, but we don't have that 6-month window of opportunity. We're going to bring somebody in here, and we're going to say to him or her, you got 3 months. By the time they learn where their washroom is, those 3 months are gone. This is not an easy floor to navigate. I came from another place, and it took me a couple of years to learn how to navigate here. And the way that we navigate here is different from other places, other municipal councils. They don't navigate the same way. And for us to sit there and say, you know, would you sign this pledge? Well, guess what? That and 50 cents will get you a cup of coffee. And if we want to avoid that cup of coffee, maybe what we need to do is ask the province and say, give us clear direction on when can we hold elections or not. If a seat is vacant, and it's vacant for more than 6 months, we can ask for a by-election. But bringing somebody at the eve and say, we're going to let you go until the end of the term and we can put your name up in lights and all that stuff, we're not doing that person a favor. We're not doing that person and those constituents justice. I've listened to some of the individuals, and we even have a former colleague that wrote a letter and says, I'd like for you to support this individual. Well, the former colleague was here. I sat beside her for 3.5 years. And my question to her was, what happens if you lose? Will you come back? Well, I don't. What happens if you lose? Will you run to come back? There was no denial that I'm going to run to come back. There was no something that says to me, if I lose, I'll look after my grandkids. So I'll say to you that although I think Divya Nayak is a great individual, I think she's a placeholder. Definitely a placeholder until our former colleague, if she loses. Freedom of speech, madam. Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And if you want me to, I'll read you which it is.
Councillor Davis, please, please.
Thank you. You know what? There's nothing private in the world.
Oh, nothing private. Nice.
Sorry.
I'm not going to cater to it, but I know one thing. Shelley Carroll's name, if she loses in this provincial election, is going to be back on the ballot.
Thank you, Councillor Karygiannis. Councillor Fletcher to speak.
Yes, I'd like to thank all of the 18 people that put their names on the ballot and all of those who came today to have their 5 minutes and answer questions and who care so much for the city and who care so much for their community. And that's a big thank you, because it's stressful to do that and come here to speak. It's like an all-candidates meeting, but we're the only voters. And I just want to say about by-elections and appointments. I do believe strongly in by-elections, but we're in a situation where we have an appointment. I think if somebody runs in a by-election and is elected, then obviously that's fine for them to run in the next election. If someone is appointed, I have very strong feelings about that, and I'm sorry if Councillor Karygiannis, if you think that that was untoward in asking people, but for me to give my vote, I need to know that somebody is honoring the fact they're here as a caretaker. They're not using this as a way to step up and run and have an advantage. They have an office budget, they have many different things, they can go call themselves councillor in their election material, and that's why I think it was, if everyone remembers Councillor Leon when he came and he pledged not to run. Many people said, Peter, you're so good, you should run. He had a very difficult time, and at the end of the day, he said, I pledged that I would not do that, and therefore I'm not running. That was difficult for him, but he had made that commitment and he honored that. Councillor Hart and Councillor Troisy told council, no, I'm not going to run. I'm here as a caretaker. So if you think I'm a little focused on that, it's because I do want to know. And some people said, yes, my name's on the ballot already. I've already put my name in. Or yes, I'm planning to run. So on my list, I had to remove those people because we have to make sure it's fair. Fair for the electorate, fair for everybody who puts their name to run for a council position, that there isn't somebody there who by nature of 40, however many there are going to be here today, 40-some people, that they now are a councillor. And then they're running as a councillor. I think that every one of us that goes into elections knows how hard they are, knows the amount of money you have to raise, the number of people you have to speak to. The pressures of an election are very great, no matter whether you've been in many of them, like my friend Councillor Kelly, or you've just had your first one, like Councillor Shan. They are pressure cookers. You have to put yourself out to the public. And therefore, I think the playing field has to be fair, has to be level, and the way to do that is make sure that people are committing, and it's not legal, it's not binding, but it is moral. It is a moral commitment. And councillors are only as good as their word. We know that in our communities. We know that in our communities. When we say something, it must be taken seriously. So I thought I should really explain myself, why I feel so strongly about this fairness principle and getting a leg up for an election. I simply don't think that's fair. So thank you to everybody who answered that so honestly. I really appreciate it, whether you're already running and you know I can't support you, or whether you have told us exactly what you're planning to do.
Thank you. Councillor Perruzza.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, I'm a fan of elections. I think I've always been a fan of elections. Having said that, I just want to follow that up by saying to the folks that have applied for this position today, I'm sorry and sad for them, because they are going to witness for themselves in a few short minutes why it is that I'm sorry and sad for them, and why most of them wasted their time in applying through this process. I also want to just speak briefly to the notion of these pledges or promises not to run in a subsequent election. You as a council, you make a decision. You have a choice. You can go to a by-election. You can go to a by-election each and every time. Except I understand, now the period is very, very short. It's a span of a few months. Yeah, you're saying it would be dumb for us to go to a by-election, so therefore we should be asking the provincial government to change the act for us and give us a longer period, much like their period, so that then we can say, okay, within 6 months, you know, it's a short period, you don't need a by-election. Let that staff in the office do the caretaker work and answer the phone calls and fix the potholes, and then you have a general election. That's what we should be doing. Nobody's jumping up and down saying, here's the motion for us to do that. But you should jump up and down and move that motion, and we should be asking the provincial government. And on the notion of a promise, so we make a choice. We say we choose to appoint someone here because the Act allows us that choice. It's a conscious choice. And most of the time that choice is made based on political reasons. As Councillor Mamalidi was trying to say, it's political. There's a right, there's a left. I don't want another socialist. The other guys say, oh, I don't want another conservative. Okay. We get that. As Councillor Kelly says, we're political. The process works. I don't know if the process works. I'm not sure, based on a 5-minute interview, that we make the choice that the people of Ward 34 or 55 or 64 or 8 or 9 or whatever ward would have made. I don't know. I don't know if we make the right choice or not the right choice. So our choice is purely and totally political. But I take offense to this. When we say to people, we put Councillor Troisi and Councillor, yeah, okay, yes, Hart, Jim Hart, yes, in a really, really tough spot. We say to them, you want the best person, right? Ideally, I'd like to have the strongest person, the strongest candidate who comes forward, represent that ward. Because we have made that choice to go to an appointment. We chose not to go to an election. We chose to take that decision away from Ward 34 or 22 or whatever ward we did. And then we say to the people coming here, will you promise not to run again? Why do I take offense to that? I enjoy the privilege of incumbency. I do. I earned it. As many of you have earned it. Like everybody else who works in every other job. They gain experience, they do a good job, they've earned that incumbency. And they're assessed based on that incumbency to continue to do their work. So we say to somebody, we'll give you the job, but will you promise or pledge or whatever that you won't run again? We want to take away your right. We want to diminish you. I enjoy incumbency. I welcome you on council. You're an equal vote to mine. You're an equal voice. You get to represent your vote, your ward. But then you know what? Now, feel guilty as sin if you go home and decide to change your mind about running. Because you promised. Or you pledged. How dare we?
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Speaking to the issue that's in front of us, the selection of a candidate to replace my former partner of 15 years, Councillor Carroll, a very distinguished member of council. She has, in my view, been someone that we have paid a lot of attention to. Her voice has been heard loud and clear in this council and beyond. She is someone that I think that we can all say had a lot of integrity here. She has done a lot in terms of her experience in budget and other things here. She has actually offered some information to us as to who she feels should be her replacement. I firstly want to thank all of the 18 members of the community and the citizens of Toronto who've stepped up to offer themselves as a replacement to Councillor Carroll. I will be voting for Divya Naya. I actually know her. I have over a number of years seeing her in the community and felt that in fact she would be a great member of council, whether or not she was running or whether or not she is appointed. She happens to be, in this particular case, amongst the 18 members who have offered themselves. Now, I look at her, although I've known her, I don't know her very well, but I've seen her at varying community events and so on. But I've looked at her, the way she conducted herself here today, with a tremendous amount of poise, calm. She's offered to us a sense of understanding of her community. She's offered to us, in my view, a sense of experience. She's offered to us a sense of engagement in the community. She has skills. She is someone from the diverse community in this city that we want to encourage to be members of council. And I don't focus her diversity with respect to her skin color. I focus her diversity in addition to her diversity of thought and the ability of her diverse experience. And I ask myself, would this be of benefit to this council? And the answer that I've come up with is yes. There are others as well that we saw here today, Madam Speaker. But I think at the end of the day, the one person that stood out for me the most was Mrs. Naya. In fact, it was quite similar when Councillor Chirozzi came here and was in a similar position. What stood out for me at that point was someone with integrity, experience, a sense of understanding of the community, and a sense of passion. And I have to say, I will use her as a model with respect to our ability to make good decisions. Additionally, Jim Hart. Jim Hart, as we know, had experience within the context of the city, having worked here for 30 years or so. And he has come in through this process where we have selected him. Having watched him and having been able to question his judgment and so on, and the answers that he provided, not dissimilar to Ms. Naya. Yes, there were other candidates as well that I thought if Ms. Naya was not here, I would have been selecting perhaps number one, and perhaps I would have given another opportunity to a couple of others and so on. But she is here, and she is the type of candidate, she's the type of person that we need on this floor of council to help us to make decisions that's reflective of the 50.5% diversity that exists in this city, Speaker. So for those reasons, I will be supporting her for the position. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Matlow.
Madam Speaker, I'd like to spend a moment to talk about the councillor who we are replacing today with this appointment. Shelley Carroll, I believe, will go down in the history books as one of the great, really the giants of City Council, one of the great city councillors in our history. She performed in a way that was always deeply thoughtful, with integrity, focused on her community with resolute confidence and dedication, but was always the kind of person when we would debate big policy matters who was always a problem solver. I think all of us will recall at least one time, if not many, where there was a big debate, a big controversial discussion at council, no matter what it could be. Shelley was always the person who would try to sit down and have conversations with different groups and different divided groups and try to find that sweet spot, that place that people could come together, very much like how Pam McConnell, we remember Pam McConnell, somebody who would always try to find that island, I think, as we referred to with Pam. But Shelley spoke passionately about her position, too, when she disagreed with you, when she disagreed with me. And I just want to acknowledge that today we are not only appointing somebody to replace her, but I think it's important just to speak to the person who Shelley Carroll is. And I've just never been more impressed with an elected representative. She's sincere, honest, genuine, and I feel very privileged that I had an opportunity, a moment in my life, to be able to work with her. I looked up to her for many years before when she was a councillor and before that on the Toronto District School Board. As far as how I'm going to vote, I was not called by anyone to vote for anyone. I sought out Councillor Carroll's opinion. I texted her and I asked her, and then I saw her subsequent to that, and I asked her, who would you support? And she told me about Divya Nayak, and I had an opportunity to briefly meet Divya. The reason that I was interested in Councillor Carroll's opinion is because I was just at a fireworks event last night in my community, and I saw dozens and dozens of people from our neighborhoods in Midtown Toronto who I love and I've got relationships with and I've known for many years, if not decades. And I know that each of you can tell those same stories. Every time I go to the local supermarket, I run into friends and people who have become part of my extended family, because that's the connection that I've got with my community, as I know many of you feel the same way with yours. And that's what Shelley created over many, many years of working with her Ward 33 community. And I can't think of anyone in a better position to be able to recommend somebody who would be able to see through to fruition some of the work that they have on their plate today, be able to conclude in a delicate, difficult, but important way some of the more challenging issues, some of the development projects that we heard about today, than Shelley Carroll. She knows the fabric of the community. She knows the players. She knows the people. And no one would want to leave that place better than they found it, more than Shelley Carroll. I'm not an expert in Ward 33, nor are any of you, but Shelley Carroll is. She really is. And the interesting thing about Divya Nayak is she actually began her relationship with Shelley Carroll as her opponent. She ran against her in the last election. Divya, I've learned today, has very different opinions about transit, some of the transit projects than I do. And there was a moment where I thought, how can I even rationalize supporting her, even though I said I would, based on Shelley's recommendation. How can I do that? And then hold on, Glenn. We'll do this later. But this, no, hold on. This is about Divya. This is about the candidates here, and this is about Shelley. So, and then I realized when I really thought about it, over the next few months, Shelley's staff need the security to know that they're going to be able to be in their positions and be able to continue the good work that they do for that community, and that community trusts them. And that's something we can be assured of with this candidate. We also know that Shelley and Divya would work in an amicable, respectful, positive way to ensure that those complicated, difficult, contentious issues in the community will be dealt with in a good way. And wouldn't we all want the same for our own residents, right? Good governance within that community. So I'm willing to sacrifice the fact that we may not be on the same side of a couple of votes that mean a great deal to me, because I also recognize that as a Democrat, that community deserves to be able to choose as well as they can, even confined within this awful appointment process,
thank you, Councillor.
somebody who will reflect them.
Thank you, Councillor Matlow. Councillor Burnside.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'll be actually very brief. I'm actually not looking for a candidate to that someone Councillor Carroll has endorsed, not because it's Councillor Carroll, but because I actually feel that she's moved on, and that's fine, but it's no longer her decision. I think it's Council's decision, and so that's what's really important to me. And I know we can wax eloquent, if you will, about legacy and everything else and fulfilling that legacy, but I also recognize it's a 6-month appointment. Half the time or more is going to be during an election period. So I'm really looking for someone who is who's been involved in the community, who's capable, and who will be able to answer their constituents' calls, because I really don't think it's going to be much more than that. Thank you.
Thank you.
There's some big planning applications.
Okay. Members of council, I will now ask the city clerk to instruct you on the balloting process.
We will now proceed shortly to the balloting for appointment of the office of councillor for Ward 33. If the candidate who receives the greatest number of votes cast receives the votes of more than 1/2 of the number of the members of council present and voting, I will declare the candidate to be appointed. If the nominee with the most votes does not receive the votes of a majority of the members present, council will conduct another round of voting. The next ballot will exclude the nominees with the fewest votes and any nominees with no votes. Balloting will continue in this way until the candidate receiving the most votes also receives the majority of votes. If only 2 nominees remain and the votes for the 2 remaining nominees are tied, I will select the appointee by the following method. The names of each of the 2 remaining nominees will be placed on 2 sheets of paper of equal size, folded in half and placed in a box, and I will draw the name of one nominee from the box and declare that nominee to be the appointee. We are about to distribute the ballots for the appointment. The names of all candidates who have consented to accept the office of Ward 33, if appointed, will appear on the ballot except those who have officially withdrawn, whether they appeared at this meeting or not. Please indicate your vote by placing an X in the space provided to the right of the candidate of your choice. Please mark your ballot clearly and legibly. If I cannot determine your intention for any reason, including your handwriting, your ballot will be spoiled and not counted. You may only vote for one candidate. If you vote for more than one candidate, your ballot will be spoiled and your vote will not be counted. All members present must vote. If you do not vote for a candidate, your ballot will be spoiled. Secret ballots are prohibited by law. You must print your name and sign your ballot in the space provided. This is near the top of the ballot. If you do not print your name and sign your ballot will be spoiled and your vote will not be counted. You must remain seated and silent during the voting process until all ballots have been collected. I will not begin the balloting process until all members have taken their seats. When you are finished voting, please fold your ballot in half and place it on the ledge in front of your desk for collection. We will collect the ballots when all members have finished voting. Members, the process is about to begin. Please take your seats and remain seated during the voting process. We will now distribute the ballots.
Councillor Mammoliti. Wow. Did someone lose their mouse? Councillor Aljamari found it on her desk. Thank you. Madam Clerk, if I can have members please take their seats. Madam Clerk, would you please announce the results of the first ballot?
Members, I have the results of the first ballot for appointment to Ward 33, Don Valley East. There were 41 ballots cast. The number of votes required to appoint is 21. There were no spoiled or illegal ballots. The results are as follows. For Randolph Buchow, 1 vote. Councillor Carmichael Greb. Well, I don't have the. Well, for Councillor Buchow, 1 vote. For Councillor Hertz, 1 vote. Sorry, not Councillor. For Robertson, 1 vote. For Lister, 7 votes. For Nayak, 18 votes. For Tseo, 13 votes. As follows. For Buchow, Councillor Carmichael Greb. For Joel Hertz, Councillor David Shiner. For for Kenneth Robertson, Councillor McMahon. For Jonathan Tseo, Councillor Holland, Councillor Palacio, Councillor Burnside, Councillor Pasternak, Councillor Crawford, Councillor Campbell, Councillor Ford, and Councillor Karygiannis. For, sorry, where are we? These are all jammed together. Where are we? Okay, sorry. I'm sorry, these are totally not in the right order. Here's more for Tsao. While we sort out our paper, I'm going to read the results for Ken Lister, Councillor Palacio, Councillor Burnside, Councillor Pasternak, Councillor Crawford, Councillor Campbell, Councillor Ford, and Councillor Karygiannis. For Jonathan Tseo, Councillor Holland, Councillor Grimes, Councillor DiCiano, Councillor Troisi, Councillor Robinson, Mayor Tory, Councillor Mamalidi, Councillor DeBearmaker, Councillor Holliday, Councillor DeGiorgio, Councillor Hart, Councillor Bailao, Councillor Nunziata. For Davia Nyack, Councillor Fletcher, Councillor Cole, Councillor Fillion, Councillor Fragadakis, Councillor Doucette, Councillor Perks, Councillor Matlow, Councillor Shan, Councillor Davis, Councillor Mihevik, Councillor Cressy, Councillor Ainsley, Councillor Perruzza, Councillor Wongtam, Councillor Layton, Councillor Kelly, Councillor Thompson, Councillor Ajamari. Members of Council, as no candidate has received more than 1/2 of the votes of the members of Council present and voting, I will conduct a second ballot. Please take your seats. I will not begin the balloting process until all members are seated. The next ballot will exclude the nominees with the fewest votes and any nominee with no votes. Please, again, remember to print your name and sign your ballot in the space provided at the top of the ballot. If you do not do so, your ballot will be spoiled and your vote not counted. Remember to, when you've finished voting, fold your ballot in half, place it on the ledge in front of you for collection. We'll collect when all members have finished voting. We'll now distribute the ballots. Okay, it would really be helpful if we had file folders in which to dump these things. Okay, yeah, because they got all mixed up. Yeah, we need more room back there. Not enough room to do this. Yeah. Yeah, I know. It just doesn't work for this stuff. It's okay for everything else, but it does not work for this. And somehow our piles got shuffled.
Go ahead, Matt.
What is Councillor Fletcher doing? So I only have the two this time, right?
Madam Clerk, would you please announce the results of the second ballot?
Members, I have the results of the second ballot. There were 41 ballots cast. The number of votes required to appoint is 21. There were no spoiled or illegal ballots. The votes for candidates are as follows. Lister, 4. Nayak, 18. Tseo, 19. I will now read the names of the members casting votes for each of the candidates. The votes from each ballot will also be reproduced in the minutes of this meeting. For Ken Lister, Councillors Ford, Karagianis, Shiner, Palacio. For Divya Nayak, Councillor Ainsley, Layton, Wong Tam, Peruzza, Thompson, Ajamari, Kelly, Perks, Doucette, Shan, Davis, Matlow, Cressy, Mehevic, Fillion, Fragadakis, Cole, and Fletcher. For Jonathan Sale, Councillor Holliday, DeBearmaker, Campbell, Mamalidi, Mayor Tory, Councillor Nunziata, Hart, McMahon, DeGiorgio, Bilao, Grimes, DiCiano, Troisi, Crawford, Robinson, Carmichael Greb, Pasternak, Burnside, and Holland. Madam Speaker, as there is no candidate who has received more than 1/2 of the members of the votes of the members of council present and voting, I will conduct a third ballot. Again, members, please take your seats. I will not begin the balloting process until all members are seated. We will distribute the ballots, and at this point, the names of the candidates who received the fewest number of votes and no votes on the second ballot have been excluded from the third ballot. Remember again to print your name, sign the ballot at the top. If you are finished voting, fold the ballot in half, place it on the ledge in front of you for collection. Members, please take your seats. Okay.
Councillor Davis, please, we need everyone to be in their seats. Before, I know, but just, you can stand up behind your chair. Because you need to be seated in order for them to circulate the ballots. I don't know what happened over the weekend. I don't know, something happened. Madam Clerk, would you please announce the results of the third ballot?
Members, I now have the results of the third ballot. There were 41 ballots cast. The number of votes required to appoint is 21. There were no spoiled or illegal ballots. The votes for candidates are as follows. Nayak, 18, Tseo, 23. I will now read the names of the members casting votes for each of the candidates. These votes will also be reproduced in the minutes of this meeting. For Divya Nayak, Councillor Fillion, Bragadakis, Cole, Fletcher, Mihevik, Cressy, Doucette, Ainsley, Perks, Matlow, Davis, Shan, Ojamari, Thompson, Kelly, Peruzza, Wong Tam, Layton. For Jonathan Tseo, Councillor Holland, Palacio, Burnside, Grimes, Mayor Tory, Councillor Robinson, Crawford, Troisi, DiCiano, Mamalidi, Campbell, DeBearmaker, Holiday, Carmichael Greb, Nunziata, Ford, Pasternak, Shiner, Bilal, Karagianis, Hart, McMahon, DeGiorgio. Madam Speaker, the candidate who has received more than 1/2 of the votes of the members of council present and voting, I declare that Jonathan Cheo is appointed as councillor for Ward 33, Don Valley East, for the remainder of this term of council.
Members, the city clerk will arrange for the member to take the declaration of office at the earliest opportunity. Once the member has taken the declaration of office, the member can officially take their seat on council. Councillor Karagianis, you have a motion to introduce a bill.
That leave be granted to introduce Bill 600.
Shall leave be granted to introduce this bill? Recorded vote. The bill. Please, members of council, take your seats. We're voting on the bill.
Councillor Palacio, Councillor Holland, please. Councillor Palacio, Councillor Holland, please. Mayor Tory, please.
Councillor Perks, please.
The motion to introduce the bill carries 39-1.
Shall this bill be passed and declared as a bylaw? Recorded vote.
Councillor.
Members of council, can you please take your seats? Please, just a few more minutes.
Councillor DiCiano, please.
Councillor Bilal, please.
Councillor Mamalidi, when you're seated, please.
Please, members, can you please remain in your seats? We have a couple more votes.
The motion to enact the bill carries 39-1.
Councillor Ainsley, you have a motion regarding absentees.
Madam Speaker, that City Council excuse the absence of Councillor Vince Crisanti and Councillor Denzel Minnan-Wong from the May 22nd, 2018 City Council meeting.
All those in favor, recorded vote.
Councillor Kelly, please. Councillor Perks, Councillor Matlow, Councillor Shan, please, and Councillor Perruzza.
Councillor Mihevc, please.
Councillor Perruzza, thank you.
The motion to excuse the absentees carries 39-1.
Councillor Carmichael Greb, you have a motion to introduce the confirming bill.
Speaker, I'm so sorry. I would never ever vote against not allowing somebody.
Reopen.
Please retake that vote. I made a mistake.
Reopen. Why not?
Please, as you do with everyone else, I'm asking.
Councillor Karygiannis, please stop making those noises.
Sounds like the Lynx.
So, Councillor Perruzza, what is it you're asking?
Just to reopen, so I made a mistake on that vote, Speaker.
Oh, okay, so there's a motion to reopen. On favor? Carried.
Thank
Okay,
you.
let's take that vote again. Recorded vote.
Councillor Layton, Councillor Wong Tam, Councillor McMahon, please. Councillor Perruzza, your vote, please. Councillor Matlow.
Councillor Frager, thank you. Councillor Ainsley, please.
Councillor Thompson, please. Thank you.
The motion to excuse absentees carries unanimously 40 in favor.
Councillor Carmichael Greb, you have a motion to introduce the confirming bill.
Yes, that leave be granted to introduce a bill to confirm to the point of the introduction of this motion the proceedings of City Council Special Meeting 40 on May 22nd, 2018.
Shall leave be granted to introduce this bill? Recorded vote.
Councillor Layton, please. Councillor Wong Tam, Councillor Perruzza.
Councillor Palacio, thank you. Councillor Holland, Councillor Cole, Councillor Fillion, Councillor Mihevc, please.
Councillor Wong Tam, please, and Councillor Perruzza.
Councillor DiCiano, please. Councillor DiCiano, thank you. Councillor Bamaliti, please.
Motion to introduce the confirming bill carries unanimously 40 in favor.
Shall this bill be passed and declared as a bylaw? Recorded vote.
Councillor Perruzza, please. Councillor Layton. Councillor Bailao, please.
Councillor Palacio, Councillor Holland, please. Councillor Cole, Councillor Fragadakis, and Councillor DiCiano, please.
The motion to enact the confirming bill carries unanimously 40 in favor.
So, members of council, this special meeting is adjourned. We will have a half-hour break. We'll come back at 4:15 for an opportunity for the staff to change the computers and get set for our regular scheduled meeting. 4:15. Yes.